We'll start off this evening with a public hearing for Homeland Towers, which is part of their application for special use permit approval and wetland activity permit. I want to ask first if anybody here has an objection to the time and place of this hearing.
Sure.
No objection. And would anybody like the notification for the hearing read out loud? If not, we'll ask the applicant's consultant to give us a brief introduction.
Sure. Good evening, Chairman, members of the Planning Board. Attorney Chris Fisher with the firm of Cutting and Fader, on behalf of the applicants. Also with me is Scott Chassie. His firm he's the professional engineer on the project. His firm has done all the site plan, engineering, and wetlands plans that you see as part of the application package. Manny Vicente, who's the principal and president of Homeland Towers. And then also Stefan Gilbert, who is a radio frequency engineer assigned to this project by AT&T. This particular project has been part of a comprehensive review by a number of different agencies, including the Planning Board, as you know. We initially submitted a site sketch plan application in 2010. The process throughout the last 2 years has involved a review by the Zoning Board of Appeals, visual tests that have been done, refined site plans, and ultimately the Planning Board adopted a negative declaration earlier this year for purposes of secret. And the Zoning Board of Appeals granted variances including setback and height for the 150-foot tower that's proposed. We've, as part of the project team, we've consulted with additional other agencies, including New York State DEC and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. An application is currently pending before those agencies. And tonight, we're here for a public hearing on the special permit and wetlands permit that we're seeking from your board. We've also, through the process, consulted and considered comments from other interested agencies, including the town's antenna board, Conservation Commission, New York City DEP, County Planning, and the Town Board. The project, at various points in time, through both the Zoning Board and the Planning Board process, has involved notification to abutting property owners and adjacent towns. And at this point, the details of the site have changed somewhat from our original submissions back in 2010, but largely we're on the same parcel. We've moved the site to the rear. That was a result of New York City DEP jurisdiction in order to avoid some environmental constraints that they regulate. Zoning Board has granted, as I mentioned before, height and setback variances for that particular location. As a factual matter, that particular area of the site moves the tower on this property as far as we can from adjacent property owners, balancing where those various properties are located, whether it's Harriet Lane or immediately adjacent to those properties that gain access from Lockbrook Road.
Chris, could you just point out the distance that the towers moved from where it previously was?
Go ahead. Sure. Yeah,
It moved approximately 60 feet to the north, didn't move much east-west. It formerly was located in this area here, and we moved it north. Basically, what you see here is a fouling line, which is a 100-foot offset from what the DEP deemed to be a perennial watercourse, this drainage ditch here. Therefore, within 100 feet was the fouling line, so we moved the any impervious surfaces north about 61 feet in order to have all the impervious surfaces beyond the foul line.
And just for a broader reference, the parcel to the rear is undeveloped, privately held land. On either side of that, Brown Preserve on one side, and then land trust properties on the other. The residences they're off this scaled site plan. We can show a larger site plan. Let me show the other one. Yeah, that'd be
Vicinity or?
yeah, that's good. So this is a little bit different scale. This is Lockbrook Road.
North is oriented up.
Adjacent properties here and here are residentially developed. And additionally, this is Harriet Lane over on this side of the map to the west. So the site, as proposed, has been moved to the rear parcel, as we mentioned. On this particular plan and some of the other plans, we can answer questions certainly as they come up. There are various other improvements that are incorporated, including screening for purposes of off-site views of the compound. Additionally, on-site wetlands mitigation to address some of the buffer impacts that are associated with the project, And then some of the other details, there's an existing drive there that is also being modestly improved for purposes of gaining access to the tower location. From a coverage standpoint, there are a lot of detailed plots and reports and information. We've gone over those in the past year or so. The big picture, there's unreliable service for all the wireless carriers. Essentially, along State Route 138, from the 121 intersection to 684. This particular site is intended to close those coverage gaps and provide service to the residences that are in that particular area of Lewisboro. There are some other coverage areas that actually extend to the east of 121, including over in the Walkabout section, and then there is some coverage that will come down on 121, but not fully to the high school, of course. So that's an overview of the project. We have attempted over the, whether it was through the zoning board process or as part of the planning board review, responded to comments we have received that were written comments from the public. We've responded to those over a period of time. Those should be in your records. And for purposes of tonight, I know your board is obviously interested in hearing any other comments the public may have, and we'll try to answer questions.
So let's throw it over to the consultants, to Jan, and Jan.
At this point, I think the majority of our comments have been addressed and satisfied. We are waiting to hear back from the DEC on their Article 24 freshwater wetland permit. We'd recommend, prior to any decision being made by the planning board, that we at least get a notice of complete application or some sort of comments back from the DEC, just letting us know that we're all on the same page with the mitigation that's been proposed. I think at the last planning board meeting, the board determined that the tower would take the form of a monopole as opposed to a stealth tree. I think there was some general color choices selected by the planning board. But I think as we move forward, we'll be looking for maybe some color samples that you can provide to us if the board can select specific color options for the lower and upper halves of the pole. The tree canopy, average tree canopy height over there is about 75 feet. What we've done in the past is have that transition between the colors occur 10 or 15 feet below the average tree canopy height, so you don't see that break in the sky. Other than that, I think we had a couple of minor comments on the stormwater calculations or just some backup information that you can give us. And as a condition of approval or decision, we'd ask that we take a look at the access easement and maintenance agreement for access and stormwater. I think all the stormwater improvements are going to be located obviously on private property, and I'm sure that the applicants are going to have some control and maintenance obligations there.
Okay, Joe, anything to add?
No, Jan covered it. Like you said, we had some very minor comment with the stormwater. Got a number of practices there to deal with the runoff and the treatment of that runoff. Just looking for some simple backup supporting documentation, but nothing major.
Jan?
CAC had no further comments.
Members of the board? John?
I have no comments at this point.
I'd like to just bring into the conversation, there was one letter from a local resident, I believe his name was Tissot, which you entered a response to, and I wondered if you wanted to say a word about the issue of new technologies and how this system is still essentially functioning, or best functioning. I see you have an RF representative. Maybe
Sure.
you want to say a word about that?
Sure. Why don't I give an overview, and then he can answer some specific questions or provide some additional comments, Stefano. The letter writer essentially asked about alternative technologies and whether they might be viable for purposes of providing coverage in this particular area.
Without the use of 154.
Right, exactly. Without the use of some support structure like a communications tower. And the writer referenced a news article that refers to small cell technology as the kind of vernacular term, if you will. I responded to that, and let me just maybe it'd be easy if I just give an overview from our perspective of what's happening in the broader marketplace, then bring it back to Lewisboro. Actually, it's probably very timely. The new iPhone came out this past Friday. 5 million new iPhones were sold. Networks are trying to keep up with that kind of speed and reliability that's demanded by people that are using the iPhone. It's data, it's voice, it's not just iPhones, but I'm using that as an example. And where you're seeing a huge impact on wireless carrier networks is particularly in urban areas where there's a lot of demand. So originally, networks were built out there 20 years ago were intended to handle voice traffic, very different environment. In order to be able to keep up with that, there's any number of technical solutions they're deploying. There's antennas on rooftops, there's antennas on sides of buildings, there's what's called distributed antenna systems, which are these fiber-linked nodes. There's small cell technology that's really not ready for commercial application, but coming to try to deal with on a very, very micro level a demand center. So think of a busy lobby of some office or venue. Venues are being wired with wireless systems in a DAS environment, so stadiums, like the new Giant Stadium, things like that. And it's all because the amount of usage over these networks has exponentially grown in the last 5 years with the advent of a smartphone and data and iPads. Every indication is that's not abating. And so where you're seeing all this technical evolution is to try to keep up with demand and capacity. But what hasn't changed is that in places like Lewisboro, where it's not fundamentally capacity that's driving the need for service, it's coverage. We still don't have coverage in Lewisboro after 15 plus years of this technology being around, wireless service. That's not changing, and the environment here, the terrain, I don't know what the town's population growth statistics are, but they're probably really low. There's not going to be a huge change in the overall population of Lewisboro for the next 10 years. So what the carriers are still trying to achieve is what they started 20 years ago doing, which is just your basic coverage. The technology that's going into this tower, it'll have all the bells and whistles. It'll be 4G LTE technology, it'll be super fast, it'll support all these different devices. But the physical environment and the drivers are still coverage, and small cells are totally irrelevant in that scenario. So is DAS. When we talked about probably 6 months or so ago about DAS, that many of these subdivisions don't even have telephone poles, which you would need something to attach an antenna to. It's all underground utilities. So the article is talking about what's happening in a technical sense in these high urban capacity demand areas. It's not talking about Lewisboro, and you still don't have a need for towers. That's my perspective, my opinion, based on what I know and some of the organizations I'm involved in. But if you want to talk about the specifics along 138 related to that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I'm just gonna take the same word, that we just heard. The DAS system, you are at a low, you collocate on some low poles, where you are below the tree line. Then to be able to provide coverage, you just need a lot of these facilities. You're gonna need to collocate on a lot of these poles, to provide a coverage that you cannot even compare to a tower. So it can be at 150 feet above tree line and can shoot over all the trees and provide coverage to all the surrounding residential areas. We will use a DAS system, just to cover one stretch of the road, not to cover an area. And it's actually also applications that you can see. We see it more in the urban area, in tunnels, to cover just a tunnel, to cover just one road, where there's some deficiency in coverage, where we just add this low sites, to basically complete the network. But here, we just need to cover a large gap, coverage gap, and only tower sites, will allow this kind of coverage.
And that's something that the town's antenna review board has actually looked at over time and commented on as well.
Could you state your name and credentials?
Yes. My name is Stéphane Guillabert. I'm a radio frequency engineer representing AT&T. I worked for about 12 years in the industry. I worked for Sprint, I worked for Cricket. I got a master's degree in, 2 master's degrees, one in physics at the University of Paris. I got in 98, and I got in 99 a master in telecommunication at the University of Paris as well. And I testified, before more than 100 times in front of zoning boards or planning boards.
Well, thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah.
John?
I'm fine. I think we've heard, what we needed to hear.
Okay. Is anybody here from the AAB? I don't see Ted here. No. Okay, so we'll open it up to public comments, and I would ask that you, can I have a show of hands, see if anybody's here to comment? 4. We'd like to have your name and address as you stand, but then maybe after you speak, you could also write it on paper so we get that correct. Why don't we start with you, sir?
Right from here?
Yeah, stay, yeah, or you can come up.
Hi, Al Cobbin, my wife Janet Bowers here, 111 Walkabout Road. You've heard from us over this long process, you've read our emails and our letters, so I'm going to be very brief. I just have a few comments a few areas I just want to touch on. I want to touch on the Grinnell Preserve issue, the monopole versus the tree canopy, and the letter from our realtor that we received recently. Regarding the preserve, it's our opinion that when a decision is going to be made that negatively affects homeowners and taxpayers, including a financial negative impact, that the town and the board has a responsibility to do everything that they can to investigate options. Not just do superficially, but do it in good faith and do their due diligence and seeing whether options are available. And regarding the preserve, I'll just give you just one example of what we think maybe the board hasn't done that. At your meeting at November 15th, Ms. Clark, the town attorney, indicated that her assessment was that the preserve would not be available without great legal stretching and machinations, which she believed unlikely to occur. But then she admitted that that was based on information provided by Mr. Fisher, Homeland's attorney, and that she, in fact, only did some, and I highlight some, investigation on her own. So I think that, to me, doesn't satisfy doing the due diligence in pursuing the preserve, whether or not that's an option. We heard that it wasn't, statements were made that it were just statements. I don't know what's behind those statements. Regarding the monopole and the tree canopy, we've been attending all the meetings, and in 1 or 2 meetings we did not attend. We reviewed the minutes, and I was a little taken back at the last meeting, because there's clearly a discussion and opinions on the pole, whether it should be a tree canopy or a monopole. In fact, 3 members felt it should be a monopole, 1 felt it should be a tree canopy. But I don't recall any public discussion on what basis those decisions were made. Obviously, there was discussion among the members, both this board and the zoning board, I believe, on this issue, but I don't recall seeing anything in public, and I think that should have been done in public. I just heard tonight that there was some discussion, and there may be a reason why a monopole should be there instead of a tree canopy, but we don't know what that is. I understand the tree line is maybe 75 feet, a tree canopy might be 150, and that might be a little too obvious. I understand that, but you're looking at a forest preserve, and have a monopole in the middle of a forest preserve seems somewhat a little strange to me. In addition, the Lewisboro Conservation Advisory Council back in February 20, 2011 recommended a tree canopy design. And finally, regarding the realtor's letter, the letter was sent by a well-respected, well-seasoned local realtor that we've retained, to sell a property which is on the market. And she indicated in her letter that, in fact, one potential buyer walked away after the buyer went to the planning board and reviewed the file and the plans for the cell phone tower and no longer was interested in the property. So there is some documentation, and there'll be more of that as we go along, and we're going to continue to document those types of issues. Regarding Mr. Fisher's response to that, he indicated that it wasn't documented, but it was one documentation right, as I just mentioned. You don't get a lot of buyers in this market, as we all know, but when they do come, you treat them dearly to try to make a deal. This one just walked away once they found out about the cell phone tower. Regarding the seasonal effect, or we don't have seasonal views of the cell phone tower, well, seasonal is correct. Fall, spring, and winter. So that's 7 to 8 months out of the year we'll have views of the cell phone tower in our backyard. So I think those are the only 3 areas I want to highlight. As again, we have other issues that you already have that we emailed and wrote to during this period.
Thank you.
Okay?
Before you sit down, could you just point out where your residence?
Yeah, 111. The cell phone tower is directly under. Here's the tower, so we're, let's see, right here.
So you're,
115, 111, right here.
okay.
Property line.
Thank you. Would you pass Mr. Calvin the pad so we can put his name on it? And would you care to go next?
Well, my
Oh,
husband,
you
yes.
speak. You spoke
I'm
first.
Janet Baldassare. I own the property, and my husband pretty much covered all the topics that we had discussed. But I have to tell you, I bought this house 7 years ago, and I bought it because of the property and how beautiful it was when I sat on my deck and I was in my kitchen looking out the window. This will be a bird's eye view from almost every window in my house, facing the back. And I have to say, it's going to have a devastating effect on how we feel about our property, the money I invested, that we're reaching retirement age, that not only did we lose value with the economy, but now no one will even want to buy it. So it's a real big issue. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next, would you like to, did you sign up for, did you sign the paper?
Not yet.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Clark Landis, and I live at 3 Heritage Lane.
I just want to change something.
So, I just want to take a step back here, everyone. We are talking about putting an antenna in an area where we need a wetlands permit. This is like, you want to watch TV, and you don't put the antenna on your roof, you put it in the basement. Wetlands are low, we want the antenna to be high. There are areas of high ground on both sides of this antenna. No one is interested in purchasing a slot on the antenna below 135 feet because they're useless. I mean, if we do this, people will look at our town and say, why did you build an antenna in wetlands? That just doesn't make any sense. So we're talking about an antenna. We can put 2 carriers on it. I guess AT&T and somebody else above 135 feet. And then we'll be looking for another spot to build another antenna for whoever else wants to have cell phone coverage. I personally think this is ridiculous. The gentleman who spoke about the tower seems to think that a DAP system isn't a good idea because people might want to call from the middle of the woods or something. But in fact, the stated goal, I think, of our policy is to get coverage on 138, which is easily accomplished with a microcell system. Easily accomplished. Moreover, anybody who's ever been in Grand Central Station knows that it's not always the signal, but the number of channels that you have, or the amount of bandwidth you can get, that determines whether you can use full speed 4G, LTE, or whatever. So if you had a DAP system, you'd have many more towers and many more bandwidth available for everyone's house, assuming they're close enough to 138 to use it. This may be the best easy solution. It's certainly not the best solution. I don't know if anybody has a topo map here. I have one. This is where we're talking. Nobody can see this.
Well, you can hold it up on, put it on that clip on top. Clip it up.
This is where we're talking about building the cell tower. It's right between 2 areas of higher ground, one at 550 feet, one at 570 feet. Over here is an area of 500 feet. The cell tower is barely going to clear these. Maybe you'll clear up a few dead spots. Great. There's still going to be a few dead spots. maybe one carrier will get their signal through to somebody's, a few basements. I think that's not really worth the cost to the people who live near the tower, and probably doesn't accomplish the goals that the Attendant Advisory Board has. I'd also just like to remind everyone that if we're talking about protecting wetlands, one of the things that's going to go along with a cell tower is a whole diesel generation facility, and we have the possibility of who knows what's going to happen with that. And spill diesel fuel out there, who knows? That's all I've got.
Could you show us
Thank
where
you.
you live? Yeah.
Sure. I live at 3 Harriet Lane, which is...
It's right on the left-hand side, right by the legend, where it says legend.
Okay.
Further left, I think. Yep. Just there.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mr. Lynn. So, Mr. Brancato.
Hi, my name's Ed Brancotti. I live at 5 Webb Lane, and I have cell service in my kitchen. I'll be brief. I just think it's a matter of public policy. It's bad business to put the cell tower on private property. It needs to go on public property for a variety of reasons, most of which you're well aware of. I think this is probably going to get done the way it is because it's expedient. It's not necessarily the best decision by a long shot. If you do go ahead and do this, one thought that's been bothering me, we've talked about how 15, 20 years ago there was no such thing as cell phones and cell towers. On the off chance that we go past this technology, could you make a provision that require that this thing be taken down at some point? And the last thing, I've read the opinions about whether or not you can go on to Brunel. I don't necessarily agree with them, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. I would say, and I would caution not only the planning board, but the town board in accepting property in the future, that you don't put yourself in the kind of box that you're in here, that you can't do anything with the property for public safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention also, I forgot
Sure.
that my husband and I do have cell phone coverage in our home. I can walk anywhere in my home and I can use my cell phone.
Who's your carrier?
Verizon.
Verizon,
Verizon.
with a really old cell phone.
Any other comments from the public? Well, at this time,
Sorry.
because of the open item, we'll keep the hearing open and hopefully get those other matters in due course.
Would you move to adjourn? Move to adjourn the hearing? Oh, did you bring it up?
Just on the open items, to the extent that they're related to details, I'm sure we're gonna have to address those. I'm not sure there are items that would necessitate keeping the public hearing open. Certainly have the public hearing comment closed, and we're gonna continue to address those.
I would suggest you move to adjourn.
So, do I have a motion?
I move to adjourn the public hearing to a date to be set by the board. Mr. Fisher, I suspect you have probably sent this to us, but I would appreciate if you would send us again a copy of the New York City DEP, in quotes, letter, close quotes.
Sure, it was in our, one of our submissions from the summer.
Okay.
So the-
I'm not saying it's not there, but when I look for it, I didn't see it.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Just to ask on the date to be determined, I think if you're going to leave it open and adjourned, it should be a date certain, so that we don't have to deal with notice.
I don't know the timing.
My they're certainly not a result of our comments. I think our comments are very minor at this point.
Right.
Mine, we heard back from the county planning department today. They had no issue, so that was good. The one issue or reservation I have is the DEC. I wouldn't want the board to enter probably a decision until they got the notice of complete application. And my reservation about closing the hearing would be setting a time clock where the board would be required to issue a decision in the fall.
Right, but is there a date certain that we could set tonight if DEC is in control of that?
Well, that's the question.
I would just suggest the next meeting of the board, and if you're not, I see you shaking your head.
It doesn't seem
The
to me
law
it's
would
gonna be
require,
enough time.
well, and at that night, if it's not enough time, the board can certainly adjourn it again to the next date certain, but as a legal matter, we don't want to be in a position, and I don't think, the planning board secretary wants to be in a position to have to keep noticing the public continually on the public hearing process, which would be required if it's not a date certain.
Mr. Fisher, the date we're probably thinking that is October 23rd, which would be our second meeting during the month of October.
Seems fine for us.
That would be my
Yeah.
Now, with Mr. Fisher, so you don't think that this only has to do with you, we have other matters that will require Ms. Clark's attendance that we have not yet scheduled this evening. We will wait probably until later this evening, and you are welcome to stay. Please sit down.
There's enough lawyers in the room, I think I'll clock stop in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, so sit down if you want. You probably can find out in a couple hours.
Yeah, I think the October 23rd is a realistic date.
And I'm sure that, Ms. Hodges will be in contact with you either tomorrow or perhaps the day after.
Very good.
Okay?
At least we forget, I'll second
Thank you.
John's motion
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
closing the public hearing.
Adjourn.
Adjourning. All in
Now,
favor? Is it wait a second?
First, I think we should finish that up, and then I have another suggestion from Mr. Fisher.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Go ahead.
Now, Mr. Fisher, on one of your more recent submissions, you indicated that the compound fence, I think, would be steel gray. Perhaps you might want to give us an alternative that might be a black fence as well. Because as you drive around, frequently people seem to prefer black. I
That'd
have
be the
not,
posts, rails, and
Yeah, black vinyl, black vinyl coating galvanizes the least visible.
now, I'm not suggesting that that's a requirement or anything like that. I'm just suggesting it might be something you might consider.
Thank you very much.
And please feel free to step.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next item is a hearing for the New York SMSA Limited Partnership for special use permit approval pertaining to communication facilities at the Leon Media Reserve, replacing 3 existing antennas and co-locating 6 additional. Good evening, Chair. Before you start, is there any objection to the time and place of the hearing? None being expressed. Would anybody like the notice read aloud? Nobody. So, introduce yourself and
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Sheridan. I'm an associate with Snyder LLP, the attorneys for New York SMSA Limited Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless. As the chairman stated, I'm here tonight in connection with Verizon Wireless's application to replace its existing antennas on the tower and co-locate additional antennas. On September 21st, I received a copy of the consultant's report, which indicated, the consultant's report indicates that Verizon Wireless has addressed the comments that were in the consultant's earlier report from August 10th, 2012. In addition, we've submitted step 2 of the application, together with submitting the application to the Architectural Community Appearance Review Council and the Zoning Board as was requested by this board at the last meeting. At this time, I would hope at the end of this public hearing that this board can close the public hearing and approve the Verizon's application subject to those approvals of the Architectural Appearance Review Council and the Zoning Board. Would be appreciated, since it would save us time. We would not have to come back here at a later date just for what I hope to be the formality of approving the resolution.
Yeah.
As stated, our comments have already been addressed. I'll just mention that at the last meeting, the applicant agreed to include the as-built installation of the generator and air condensers that were installed with the fire building permit, but without planning board approval, into this subject application. The board did refer the application to ACARC and ZBA, and I believe they've not been yet calendared onto those agendas.
Yeah.
CSE had no comments.
Okay, move the board.
After this installation, how's it gonna benefit Lewisboro?
Well, benefit Lewisboro because it does incorporate the latest technology which was discussed earlier, which will allow for a high-speed data service in that area of the community, which, as was discussed before, is something that everybody is now interested in, and with all the new smartphones and the way the technology is moving, that's something that everybody is looking to use, and this will be able to benefit that use.
Do you know if it increases coverage at all, or generally the same coverage area?
It's going to be generally the same coverage area. This is more for the new technology as opposed to a coverage issue, but it will allow for a little bit greater capacity as well.
Thank you.
Could you just enumerate with bullets the issues before ZBA, the variances being sought?
It's just the height variance. That's it.
Have you filed your application with ZBA?
We have.
And when was that filed?
It was filed a few days ago, last week.
All right. Any other thoughts?
I think we have to ask if anybody wants
Yeah. Anybody in the audience would like to speak to this matter?
I move
No.
that we close our public hearing.
No, we
No.
can't close it. We've got to keep it. I would. I think those pieces are significant enough to hold it open. And that's what we advise as well.
All right, until we get approval from the two other,
Yeah.
at least from zoning.
CSE
So-
particularly.
We don't know, do we have any idea when that's calendared with ZBA?
We're still working, hoping to get it calendared sooner rather than
This
later.
year?
Yes.
The last time you were here, you suggested to us that it would not be calendared until November. Do you have any additional information?
At this time, it may be calendared in November. I'm hoping that that something opens up in October.
Well, one option would be to use the same date, October 23rd. Or is that
I think that's gonna be too close. When you can adjourn it without a date,
without a date certain?
and then wait for the ZBA resolution to issue.
I would ask if there any way to, just from the last time, to avoid the need to renotice, if we could have a
Well-
date certain and then adjourn it again.
Well, I mean, it would be, say, the first meeting in December or the last meeting of the year?
Possibly, it's going to depend on when they really do get in front of the ZBA, and I don't think the applicant is sure at the moment, although trying hard on this.
Perhaps the chairman could correspond with the ZBA and ask them to take this matter out of order due to its apparent simplicity and the public interest.
Do that?
That would be appreciated.
Yeah. So December 11th, that would be, I think, probably the best date we could reach for it, and make a date certain.
Well,
And we could modify that.
if your powers of persuasion carry over to the
Yeah.
zoning board as well,
Right.
and you're able to get us on the October meeting, I would hope that we could resolve this at the beginning of November, maybe the first meeting in November.
All right, well, can we adjourn, leaving it open with that as an open question?
Yes, you can adjourn leaving the date open.
Okay, so let's have a motion to that effect. Yeah.
Otherwise, he's gonna renotice.
No,
Can I-
it's gonna be,
Well,
Although I'm not the attorney for the sale, can I ask counsel a question?
sure.
What authority are you citing for the proposition that absent a date certain, you need to renotice?
Well, I would think that the authority would be, you have to notice the community again, because they wouldn't be on notice for the adjourned hearing.
The prevailing wisdom is the community is under the onus of following the application and corresponding with the board, and absent some new case or some new statute, I'm not aware of any authority which would require the board to establish a date certain. So,
Our agendas are published publicly, both on the website and anywhere else.
they're posted in town documents, but
Yeah.
you both need to tell me.
I just want to make sure that doesn't become an issue, but if that's,
Well, I mean, as a fallback, we could cite to December 11th, and if I'm persuasive, we can move it ahead.
Whichever way is comfortable for you.
I move that we adjourn this matter, including the public hearing, to December 11th, 2012, with the possibility that it be advanced on notice.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
thank you for your time.
Okay.
Just want to make sure that you will be contacting the ZBA in the hopes to get it on an earlier agenda. Is that,
I will be.
thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, project review. We have with us this evening Lewisboro Library Association, application for special use permit, approval and wetland activity permit approval to renovate the existing library.
I'm not leaving,
Good evening, Dawn.
Good evening, John McKenzie, Engineering Engineering. We have the Lewisboro Library. About the site plan now, we had previously been for the planning board with this project for the concept plan a couple of months ago. It hasn't changed significantly since then. The library is, just to recap briefly, the library is looking to put 3 additions onto the building, and we have the related site amendments to go with that. We were referred to the zoning board. We got a couple of variances, one for a side yard setback, one for a rear yard setback, and one for maximum building coverage. And we've also been to see ACARC, and I believe they've made a referral back, a recommendation back to the planning board. And now we're back to see you. We've developed a full set of site plans, 5 sheet set, which we've submitted to the planning board. We've received comments from the consultants, and we responded to the ones we had received previously. And here we are. If you want me to go through.
Yeah, let's hear comments from consultants and
Well, we had a
move on.
very productive site meeting with the applicant's engineer a month or so ago. We went through our last comment memo and walked through the project, and we were able to get a lot of our comments addressed in the field. Just to go over the approvals that are required, the application requires a special use permit and a wetland permit from the planning board. Both those applications require that a public hearing be scheduled. The application was approved by the ZBA in August. A variety of variances were granted. The application was referred to ACARC, and I believe a decision was made, but a formal written decision hasn't yet been received. Westchester County Department of Health approval is required, that approval is pending, as well as DEP stormwater pollution prevention plan approval. The applicant also requires coverage under the speedy stormwater general permit. And I believe the application's been referred to the county planning board under the general municipal law. Our office did confirm the wetland boundary. It exists on the opposite side of Main Street. The 150-foot buffer does overlay onto the property and is located just along the front building line, if I'm not mistaken.
It's the red line.
It's right here.
So some of the exterior patio improvements are located within the buffer. We'll eventually like to see correspondence or plans approved by the health department and the DEP. The applicant has requested a waiver under the landscape buffer requirements of the zoning code. And given the size of the property and the location of the building in relation to the property line, it's just completely practical for the applicant to meet that 30-foot wide buffer requirement. So I think the waiver is appropriate. And I'll just note that the applicant's provided a substantial landscape plan around the perimeter of the building. Other than that, I had a couple comments regarding some details that should be provided on the plan regarding the parking striping, location of the water line. We need some soil test results for the stormwater areas. And that was about it. And I can add if Joe had a couple comments.
Yeah, we had a general question. We talked about the site when we walked the site. This is a matter of constructing this project. There's going to be some parking, the way the plan is now, there'll be about 10 spaces maybe that are going to be lost throughout construction. And just wondering if you had any conversations with either the post office or the town board as far as losing those spaces, and if there's anything we do to minimize that. I don't know if you just planned on, you see you have a chain link fence, temporary fence around the site. You know, is that, are you planning on setting that up as a one-time deal? Is there any way we could, maybe some sequencing we could add where at times during construction that you absolutely have to have those spaces, and then maybe other times you can give them back? Maybe just take a closer look at the construction sequence and see if there's anything we can do to provide those spaces when we can, and then probably more importantly, that circulation around the back, you know, to lose that completely for the duration of the project. If there's any way we can minimize that, and I know you need to close it for the infiltration practice, but maybe before or after that, again, just some sequencing worth looking at. And then the other minor, there's some proposed improvements and some demolition that's going to be taking place off the property. Removal of some asphalt areas, and then the construction of the new walls at the rear of the library. There's a short section that would be beyond the property line. I don't know if any easements would be required or any discussion with the town board. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Well, beyond the parking, you mentioned circulation as well, because I know the mail pickup is done through the North Road, and if that's closed, there has to be some discussion with the post office.
Can I address this right now? Okay. The fencing, actually, I have it on another plan where the fencing's going to go. Do you want me to flip it over? We can take a look at it. Is that necessary?
No,
Okay.
just verbally go through.
All right. Closing the road on this side will just be temporary when we put the infiltration units in. And we anticipate that it'll probably take them 1 to 2 days to open the trench, get the infiltrators in, and get it closed back up again. So that'll be short duration closing, and we'll modify the plan to show that. We'll show an adjusted, you know, we'll show a typical line, and we'll show temporary expansion into that area. And as far as pulling it out into this space, that's also a temporary condition. It'll be a short duration, temporary, for when they excavate to put the footings in for this addition on this side, because it pushes out so close, and that may take, as long as it takes them to dig that out and pour the concrete and, you know, and backfill it, then we'll be able to pull the fence back, because it's portable. and then we'll have to pull it out again when they put the wall in, which will be short-term as well. So we'll show those two conditions, short duration for specific tasks, and then a typical, which will be tightened up.
I have one other comment, which I don't believe is the library's responsibility, except to coordinate any efforts that might be done in regard to overall drainage of the town campus site. I seem to recall a study that was done maybe 4 or 5 years ago by the town engineer at that point, Tom Altemat, on handling storm drainage from the campus site, which goes through a culvert to the wetland. Jan, are you familiar with it, or what steps that might be taken to coordinate efforts?
I'm not familiar with the previous study you're referencing, but I do know that the plan they have now shows they've mitigated all the storm events through the 100-year storm. There will be no increase in peak discharge rates post-development as compared to today. They are collecting all of the runoff from the new roof areas with the exception of the front covered porch. And that will all go into the new infiltration system. The existing roof leaders, and there's a trench drain, I believe, at the side walkway on the south side of the building. That will be repiped to the existing catch basin, which it goes to now.
We're actually proposing a net decrease to what's going into that system across the street, because we're capturing all of an area from the roofs equivalent to all of the new impervious that we're creating, and we're sending it to the infiltrator. Some of that actually includes a portion of the existing roof. So we're taking all of the new and then some and putting it into the infiltrators, reducing what's going across the street.
And again, just because of the constraints of the site with the septic systems and just the size of the property itself, they don't physically have the room to do anything further on their property. It would have to be something off-site.
But just maybe to take advantage of institutional memory, I see Willie Gresta sitting in the back. Do you remember that study that was done, and could you, is there any relevance to that in what's happening here?
Well, I don't really remember all the specifics, but it was done for, the whole campus. It really wasn't just looking at the library. The library was a much bigger endeavor, and there was some expansion of parking and even some alternatives of a different road. And I do remember the difficulties were that because of the existing septic, there was very limited areas within the library's footprint to do much of anything. So, I mean, it is at least good to hear that some of the existing roads getting captured as well, so it is reducing some of the drainage. So unless you go to the townhouse property, it's kind of hard to do more, I think.
I have a slightly different area. I noticed that you do have some handicap parking. I think that this might be an opportunity to increase the handicap parking that's accessible both to the library and also to the townhouse. And specifically, I would ask you to consider the space near the post office, where you have a rather wide entranceway into the library that might be a very appropriate spot. Secondly, near the front, and then the area near the front of the townhouse, which is this area right outside here, where you also have some space, and then also the entranceway that's over closest to the highway garage, and then also the, well, those are the ones that come quickly to mind, but particularly where there might be an entranceway, a space nearby that could be converted to a handicap spot might make a lot of easy sense. Okay? And then the other thing that the last time you were here, which I think was in April, there were some issues raised about the possibilities of sustainability, including a solar panel, which has also been raised by CAC, and not so much right now, but I think that we would all appreciate hearing about how this building would be more sustainable, and the things that you consider that you were not able to do and the things that you are able to do. All right? Finally, I know that you've been to ACORC, and apparently there's been no recommendation, and I know you've been to the town board. I also know that you had a public meeting, I think, yesterday. And I'm wondering if you could tell us what any of the suggestions that you received in any of those venues were that might interest us.
Okay, for that, I think, Donald, would you be able to speak on that? Are you leaving
Suggestions that
yesterday?
you've received in other venues, the town board, at ACORC, and also at your public meeting yesterday.
Solar panels were brought up, and we intend to look at investigating using solar panels on the roof. ACORC, there was a kind of an issue between ZBA and planning board about buffer.
We've had some discussion about that. We haven't gotten back to that yet.
Okay, all right, so there was that issue.
They also asked about the make sure we had physical separation, right? That's why we put the wall back in.
Yeah, ACORC had issues with the closeness of in the rear, the building to and we also did, and we suggested we had stone wall in and out, and we put it back in. And so that was a direct response to a suggestion they had. But I really can't think of, everything else has been pretty, I think that's basically it.
All right, thank you.
By the way, there are only 2 handicap spaces.
Right, that's why I'm suggesting they need to.
Okay. That's,
And I know there was a comment
adhering to
from-
code?
What's that?
You sticking to code, or, I mean, the 2 required based on?
I think when they calculated the handicap parking, if I'm not mistaken, they looked at the town campus as a whole. I think there's a couple handicap parking spaces directly behind us. They add those 2, and I think they become compliant, but compliant is compliant. You can always use more, and if there's additional room for additional handicap parking spaces, it should be considered.
Well, but John's point is well taken, they're strategically located so that they're near the exits.
John, do we know if there's an issue with not enough handicap parking?
I've been here and I have seen that there has not been enough handicap parking. And it may have been that somebody was having a meeting so that there was an overabundance of people. But my suggestion focuses on areas that they won't lose a parking space. They'll just happen to use some of the walkway space as well. So as to permit somebody to open a door,
Yeah.
it will be closed. It will be closed.
Right, we do have access aisles here, and we're creating one over here.
Right.
I get your point.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that the CAC had made a comment about using impervious or porous pavement, and one of the concerns with that, we can't do it for most of the walkways, my board now, because of the location of the septic systems. You cannot do infiltration practices within 100 feet of the septic system. So that's why we can't do it out front, and we can't do it on this side. Actually, that rules out all of the walkways. Or we looked at all of that when we were trying to find.
Does that exclude grass areas? Did you say impervious?
Pervious, sorry. Did I say other than
I thought you
that?
said pervious.
Pervious. You
Doesn't seem to make
you
sense.
can't use pervious
Doesn't make any sense.
pavement and infiltration practices within 100 feet of a,
Doesn't make any sense.
but that's the code. So,
Well, pervious paving system is defined by the DEC's design, the state's design manual, is a
Right,
true
but you can have a grass area.
filtration system.
Well, I don't know if they were using it as in this case, they're just using it as a pavement. I don't think it was an infiltration practice. So I think the law says that you can't, construct a practice within 100 feet of the septic, but you might be able to use impervious pavers. I don't know.
I don't think
There's
so.
probably nothing stopping you from using, say, the bluestone with an open joint,
mhm.
but to design a true infiltration,
No.
true
I
paving
don't
system.
think you're allowed to
you
claim
can't
it
do that.
As
as
for credit,
mitigation, right, is what the law is.
Right. Well, we'll do what's right. Any other questions?
So I note that you suggested that you'd be back, in April, you told us you'd be back in a year, so you're back much sooner than you originally
Did we
speculated.
say that?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Whatever happens. Okay, well, I don't think there's
Just
any.
on the point of the pavers, is that something that the board is looking or to see used?
I think it's fine.
I would think so. I think somebody needs to contact somebody.
Yeah, let's get a definition cleared up.
Okay.
So the next step is final plan.
Eventually, we're gonna need a public
Because it's
Say it's too early to
Well, that's true,
schedule a
Well, it's,
public
we
hearing?
can't
Well-
really schedule anything right now when we run into the same situation.
I think you're gonna run into the same issue.
Same thing.
Mainly the health department and the DEP, because I know we have a decision from the ZBA, ACARC is, it's gonna happen, they've closed it, it's just the time to actually prepare the document. So I think we'll get that in a timely fashion, it's just the DOH and the DEP.
If you already spoke with them, we just had to finalize the date.
Right.
So we'll just wait until we get all
Ken,
that.
do you want to?
Yeah,
Any
I
comment?
mean, I think some of it's been adjusted for the CAC, but basically we had suggested some permeable paving, and I'm not sure who actually is in control of the parking that's sort of to the east of the post office and to the north of the library, but it was said we're gonna put, or it appeared to say gravel parking, and I don't know whether that's a library or not.
You're talking about the three spaces there
Yeah,
by the
just-
dumpster?
Yeah, thinking that might be a place where permeable paving, the CAC basically feels that it would be wonderful to have some demonstration permeable paving parking somewhere in the town campus. And if that would be a spot, you know, that somebody could at least see it. But again, I don't know if that's inside the library's purview or whether that's just a.
You're talking about this area
I
up
think
here?
so, yeah.
By the post office?
Yeah, so
Yes,
that's
that is off our property.
on your property. And then I think you've already noted the solar concerns, recognizing that it might not be feasible to spend the money now, but to make sure that consideration is given to allow potential installation if it comes in the future. And we also suggested a bicycle rack somewhere convenient to the.
There's one on the plan,
We missed it.
right here.
Thank you. All right, good. And
There's
then,
also a dog hitching post, which someone requested, so.
and then a Cooper scooter. Okay. And then again, we talked about sustainability, including external designs that are not really, that sort of minimize the light pollution that's based on. That was it. Thank you.
You're watching Lewisboro Community Television, Channel 20.